1, 2, 3, 4.
Hello and welcome to an exciting edition of Dopey, the podcast on drugs, addiction, and dumb shit. Today we are joined by the lovely and vivacious Brianne Davis of The Secret Life of a Hollywood Sex and Love Addict, not to mention a working actress, producer, and director straight out of Los Angeles. We're going to find out the difference between a sex addict and a compulsive nymphomaniac, and was she an alcoholic and a drug addict as well? I feel like, to an extent, everybody is a sex addict and a food addict. You know, I bet you some people would say, I guess I'm to an extent a sex addict and a food addict because I'm not a gambling addict. And some other people would probably say everybody is a sex addict, a food addict, and a gambling addict. But I am compulsive with food, compulsive with sex, compulsive with drugs. I guess maybe I'm not really an alcoholic. I don't know. But we're going to find out what's up with Brianne. Everyone would tell me I'm an alcoholic. This morning I told a beach full of people that I was an alcoholic. Howie, do you think I'm an alcoholic?
Isn't an alcoholic someone who drinks?
Do you like the way the board looks in the bottom of the screen? You think that's cool? Are you into that?
It sounds like you're being very judgmental.
You obviously did that on purpose. It looks like. Did you like Star Wars, Hal?
No.
I know you don't.
Do you like gladiators?
Yeah. Do you like?
She's joining.
Oh, here we go. Get yourself out of here. All right. Well, welcome to Dopey, the podcast on drugs, addiction, and dumb shit. And you do a podcast called The Secret Life of a Hollywood Sex and Love Addict. Also, you have a novel called The Secret Life of a Hollywood Sex and Love Addict. Also, you're an established actress, appearing in such films as Jarhead, Prom Night, TV shows like Lucifer. And were you ever an alcoholic?
No, I don't. I just drink and snort people. That's all I do.
I did SLA for a second, and I found it very confusing. And I was just talking like I would say I'm probably some kind of a food addict. I'm definitely a drug addict, and I'm probably some kind of a sex and love addict as well. And I would say that everybody is. But is that really true? Is everybody? Because everybody who has sex and love a sex and love addict?
No, I don't think everybody is a sex and love addict. I think people have characteristics of being a love addict. I think our society amplifies it and says it's okay to, go after that unavailable person, pine for love, look for your soulmate, all that stuff. You're not complete unless you have somebody or you're having sex. So I do believe our society is full of sex and love addicts, but I don't think everybody's a sex and love addict.
Now, let me ask you a very specific question. Howie is my YouTube producer and friend for many, many years, and he was hoping that you were a compulsive nymphomaniac. What is the difference between compulsive nymphomaniac and sex and love addict?
Yeah, compulsive nymphomaniac is more, I think, a sex addict. Sex and love addict really leans into fantasy, intrigue, flirting, going after unavailable people, using your sexuality as a form for power and control and manipulation. It's not even really about the sex. It's using your sexuality or getting away from feelings. So, we sexualize stress, guilt, loneliness, anger, shame, fear, and envy. That could look like in masturbation or looking at porn or going out and having sex with somebody. A nymphomaniac is addicted just to that sexual act. More, a sex and love addict is addicted to the chase, getting the person, then being afraid of intimacy. It's really a fear of intimacy, a fear of being loved, a fear of abandonment, and all of that.
Now, how do you know all this stuff? How did you become such an expert at nymphomania and sex and love addiction?
Well, I'm not a specialist in nymphomania. I've never experienced that myself. I'm a sex and love addict in the sense I've never had a one-night stand. I haven't had many sexual partners.
Never a one-night stand. Okay, this
Nope,
is very interesting. And I wasn't, listen, I don't want to ever think you to think that I was painting you into some kind of nymphomaniac corner. I know Howie was very intrigued at the prospect, and I wanted to make sure Howie understood the difference, and I think you did a really good job explaining the difference. So I appreciate that. And I don't want you to think that
You're welcome.
I'm not casting any aspersions. I've gone down the road of a lot of those elements in terms of intrigue and obsessive thinking and all of those things. But when do you think this sort of addiction first showed itself for you? Like, when did you notice it personally?
Personally, I mean, I always knew I was obsessed, you know, at a young age with like boys and like, oh boy, I was boy crazy, you know, they always use those terms. So that definitely, I started, you know, at a very young age, exploring my sexuality with myself, which is a sign of sex and love addiction, you know, masturbating at an early age because you're scared to have a feeling or you don't know how to process your feelings because you come from a background where it wasn't modeled for you. So that's where I always go, like, a healthy marriage, a healthy relationship was never modeled for me through my parents. You know, I didn't see them love. I saw them fight all the time, never slept in the same bed, never held hands, never said, I love you. So I knew from a very early age that I was different than my friends. But the kicker was when I, you know, developed and had my first boyfriend. And after a year of being with that boyfriend, those butterflies went away. And it was like, wait, that's not what the movies and the television shows have taught me. What relationship is those butterflies, someone to rescue you. And that was gone. And I remember the moment I was like, oh, this is not real love anymore. Like, I want the love that's passionate, that you have to have them. And that would always fade for me. And I remember that I cheated the first time when I was 14 years old. And the high I got from doing this lie was like shot up my arm. It was like heroin took over my body. And I've been chasing that high ever since. So it's like that's those secrets, those lies, making somebody like fall in love with you, then like living in this fantasy bubble of the relationship. And as soon as that burst, I was then looking for my next victim, is what I would say. So I go from relationship to relationship to relationship.
Right, right. How old were you, do you think, when you started masturbating? If you cite that as part of the story.
So young. I think in the book I talk about this. It was like 5 or 6 years old.
I masturbated for the first time probably like 11 watching the Annie movie. And it wasn't like I was masturbating to Annie, but I remember I masturbated while I was watching Annie when I was 11. Yeah. But anyway, I'm just sharing. I'm just sharing my experience.
No, I'm so glad you did. You know, I always, when kids are doing that at such a young age, I try to look at, are they having anxiety? Is something else going on? And it's a way to self-soothe, because it wasn't a sexual thing for me. It was a way to self-soothe the feelings that I didn't know how to process. And I didn't have a place to process them in my household. So that would be the first thing. But it is also natural for young kids to explore their bodies. It was just when you were doing it in compulsive sense. So if she's doing that, that might be something to say, like, are you experiencing anxiety? I asked my 4-year-old that. He just turned 4. And I'm like, hey, how are you feeling? You seem like, so it's like talking about feelings in a healthy way.
Right. And it is. It's like I was such a drug addict and a television addict. Before I was a drug addict, I was a television addict, and I was a food addict. But I never would say food addict. But I ate to medicate, and I watched television to medicate anxiety and fear and like ADD and like bad thoughts. And by the time I found drugs, I was like, okay, that solves all of my problems. Off to the races. It just solved all of my problems.
I was also I was a sugar addict. I think that was the first thing. I have ADHD. I'm dyslexic. I'm hyperactive. So I would just like eat sugar because it was like, it got me so high. And then I was a latchkey kid. So I watched television all the time. So I totally relate to that. I just didn't go the chemical route. I went the, chronic brain disease to people route.
I'm sure you have experiences with drugs and alcohol, though.
No, I've actually never done any drugs. I've smoked marijuana, but I'm not a big, I don't like anything that has power and control over me. So when I was addicted to people, it made me feel powerful and in control. But in reality, we have no control over people at all, people, places, and things. So it was this false sense of power that I experienced. When I would get drunk, I would feel powerless.
Right.
Because the chemical took over. So I was never a chemical addict. I've never done any drugs whatsoever except marijuana.
How often did you smoke weed?
Oh God, I've only done it a handful of times.
Right. So that's really interesting. You know, like, I know that I want to get to like what the fuck happened, like that you had, that you found yourself in SLAA. And I think slaw is such a sad word for SLAA because it sounds like coleslaw. I've worked in a deli like my whole life, and it sounds like coleslaw, right? But slaw, you have to say slaw, and that sounds like a Midwesterner ordering coleslaw. Slaw. So like let's talk about like also like validation, you know what I mean? Like needing something to make it easier to feel good about yourself. But so you're talking about, I heard you talk about the cheating and how you felt like a beam of energy shooting through you. That's very similar to someone describing shooting coke for the first time or something like that. How did it start to manifest as you got older?
Oh my gosh, that's a thousand explanations. It was like 1,000 things all coming together at one time. And I would say, you know, when I would then cheat and then the relationship would break up, I'd go to the next relationship. And that's what I did. I went from relationship to relationship to relationship and just kept doing the same pattern. I used to say you can put a bag over the person's head. It didn't really matter who they were. It was what they mirrored back for me. So it just, every boyfriend that stakes would add up. I would make it more risky behavior. It would be like their friend of a friend.
All right, paint us a picture. Give us a salacious, because like half of the thing that we live on in the dopey world is a fucked up story. So give us a little, paint us a little picture. This is exciting.
Well, you got to read the book to get the real nitty gritty. I don't like to talk about, you know, the horribleness, but, you know, I put myself in situations where I actually cared about somebody, and then I'd go on set and I would be flirting and intriguing and then having a boyfriend while on set. And then it would all be a lie. And then I would do it again. And it kept amplifying and getting worse. And I just could not live with myself and look at myself in the mirror anymore, because here's like, I don't want to do these things. I know it's morally wrong to cheat. I know it's not healthy for me. It creates a drama where there doesn't need to be drama existing, but I definitely put myself in positions where, you know, I didn't want to do something and I did. I, you know, got talked into something. I mean, you have to read the book. It gets really dark, and that's why I wrote it, because I don't want to relive it, but I want to show people they're not alone, and that just because I've done bad things doesn't make me a bad person. I was just empty and incomplete and looking for this outside person to complete me, which no one can.
No, our whole audience is drug addicts, sex addicts, gambling addicts.
Yeah.
So like nobody's going to think you're a bad person, because we've all done things that maybe we wish we didn't do. And some things that like, even if it's something that we didn't want to do and we don't look back on it joyfully, it taught us something, and it defines us in a way for how we don't want to be, you know? In the process, like with drug addicts, it's so often that a drug addict will try to get sober, will go to detox, and then find that they've backslidden and relapsed. Does the same thing hold true for you as the sex and love addict, that you were like, fuck, I can't believe I'm doing this again, and I don't want to do this? Like, did you have any experience like that?
Well, we call them slips, our bottoms. We hit our bottom. So this, for me, when I entered the program, I completely surrendered. Like, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I had the dark night of the soul on another set, about to blow up my life one more time. And I had this moment when I was looking in the mirror going, oh my God, am I going to be doing this till I'm 80? Like, am I going to be on my deathbed, never fully connected to another person? So I had that glimmer. I had that like little God glimmer, which I didn't believe in God or think of a higher power. So when I went to a therapist, she said two things to me. She said, you wear the mask of a high class prostitute that I know. I was like, what the fuck?
What does that mean?
I've never had like she said, because I wear a mask, like she didn't know who I was. I had like a mask on top of a mask, and being an actress, you know, you wear a mask anyways of the character. So she said, you wear the mask of a high class prostitute. There's like a deadness to you, she said. And I said, I've never had a one night stand. I've never been paid for sex. And I was like, wait, I have done things I haven't wanted to on a date, you know, if someone took me out to dinner or whatever. So I was like, oh, not that there's anything wrong being paid for sex, but I was so taken aback. And she said, oh, I know what your problem is. You're a sex and love addict. And we went through the 40 questions, which you can go online and answer the 40 self-diagnosed questionnaire, SLAA. Type that in and it'll come up. And it's questions like, are you always looking for someone to fix you? Have you had inappropriate sex with inappropriate people at inappropriate times? Have you lost track of the number of people you've had sex with? Are you always looking for a shining armor, a soulmate to come complete? All those things. So when I filled it out, my number was just astronomical. And I surrendered that day, and I found myself in a meeting. So I personally have not had any slips, but SLAA, SLAA as a program is the PhD of all other addictions. People come in with 33 years in AA and say, I didn't want to come to this room. A guy came in, you know, when I got my 6 months and said, I can quit heroin, but I can't quit her, because underneath any addiction, especially chemical addiction, is relational. If you go to any rehab, which I speak at a lot of rehabs, the number one thing that you lose your sobriety over is relationships. And I'm not just talking relationships with lovers. I'm talking relationships with family members,
Sure,
friendships, lovers on top of it. So this addiction hits every area of your life. Every person in my life, when I really looked at it, I use them to fill me. I use them to give me my validation, my self-worth. I would go to a friend and totally use them, even an unavailable friend. And then if they weren't available, I would blame myself. So it's like low self-esteem, fear of abandonment.
What does that look like when you're using a friend?
Yeah, this was like year 5, I think, in my recovery, when I had this moment, and I was sitting in my car on Melrose, and I had a bad audition or something stupid. And I picked up the phone and I called a friend, and I in the car, and I talked to her. I was like, this is happening. This is happening, blah, blah, blah. And it didn't make me feel better. And I remember hanging up with her and calling another friend. And I compulsively did that with 4 friends in a matter of an hour and a half, not moving out of this parking spot. And it just was this God shot. And I was like, holy shit, I do this with everyone.
But explain that. Hold on.
Every single person.
Explain that a little bit more. If something goes wrong, right? The audition was bad, and I mean, there's nothing unhealthy about, and help me understand this. As far as I can tell, there's nothing unhealthy about calling a friend and being like, you know, what the fuck am I doing with my life? I fucked this thing up. I feel so badly. Where does it become using the friend when you're in that car in that moment?
Well, there's a compulsion, and especially if you're using them over and over again. You know, a lot of my friends use me, and they call me and say, I got in a bad relationship. I went back to him. And it's like, I keep telling you how to help you, but you keep doing the same thing over and over, then reaching out, and you want me to make you feel better. And I can't do that anymore.
Right.
So it's like this compulsiveness. And then when the friend is giving you advice and you're actually not taking it in, that is a big sign. And that you're not caring about them at all. Like, I had no care whatsoever about their time. Like, I was like raping them of their energy is what I say. Like, I rape people of their energy and their like attention.
Well, and it's self-centered, right? It's self-seeking. It's
totally
self-centered. Now,
yeah.
I want to talk more about the end of your sex and love addiction and the beginning of your recovery. Like what did that transition really look like? Because I mean, we've done 356 episodes and most everybody's on heroin or crack or an alcoholic. And it's like the story is a very familiar story. If you've ever seen a movie about a drug addict, you kind of know what happens and when they bottom out and how they try to get better. And, you know, we can all relate to it. With Sex and I mean, I went to Sex and Love Anonymous, Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, because I lost my partner aunt because I was such a drug addict, and she had our daughter, and I could not think of anything else, and I thought that I was nothing without them, and I literally couldn't make it 5 minutes with being like, I can't believe I fucked that up. What am I going to do? And I would be like your friend calling and be like, what am I supposed to do? How come I can't get her back? And it was incessant. You know, I wound up in Alcoholics Anonymous to have the obsession lifted. And I was talking about this specific situation, and they were like, oh, you should go to SLAA. And I went to SLAA, and it was very confusing to me because there were all the different bottom lines. Like someone's like, I haven't fucked a prostitute in 7 months. I haven't masturbated to, you know, bondage porn in 6 weeks. I haven't, you know, like it's this crazy list of bottom lines that it's not just one absolute, because there are all these kind of different bottom lines. So can you talk us through the end of your addiction? Like, what did that really look like? What was the bottom? And then what was it like when you showed up there?
So first of all, let me just clarify, bottom lines in Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous are completely different. Your bottom lines will be different from my bottom lines. That's why this addiction is so hard, because it's not black and white like drugs and alcohol. Just don't drink the alcohol. Don't shoot the heroin. Like, you are sober. But with sex and love addiction, it's brutal to see what your behaviors are. So for me, you know, when I came in, my bottom lines are really, really strict. And this is what they look like. You know, no sex outside of a committed relationship, no guy friends whatsoever. So I had to get rid of all my guy friends, no texting, emailing, or talking to any men whatsoever, which that would look like going to a restaurant and not even looking a waiter in the eyes, because I was always putting off that energy that I was available. I was always flirting. I used to say I could flirt with a chair. So my bottom lines are really, really, really strict. And it was the worst pain ever going through the withdrawal. And I've never gone through drug and alcohol withdrawal. I've worked with a lot of people that have. You know, I've sponsored a lot of people that have, and it sounds brutal, and I know it's brutal, but my withdrawal from sex and love addiction was 9 months. I cried every day for 9 months. And I'm not talking like just little tears. I'm talking like heart-wrenching. I want to crawl out of my skin. I want to zip out of my skin and crawl out of it. It was the worst pain I have ever experienced, because I was no longer going to people in my life or strangers or net for likes or validation or walking down the street to get my attention. So it was literally like I was dying. I felt like I was dying. I just remember walking into my first slaw room, and I talk about this in chapter 3 a lot. I walk you through the process, but it's like 30 people. This was 12 years ago, so it was a smaller program, but 30 people, all different races, as you know, everybody's different. And every single person in that room said something I did, almost did, thought I was going to do, you know, all these things. And it was like, oh my God, I'm not broken. I just didn't get the tools to have healthy relationships. So that was like, I surrendered that day. And I remember crying and going, I'm a sex and love addict, thinking my life was over, thinking, what do you mean I can't flirt? What do you mean I can't intrigue? What do you mean I can't have guy friends? What do you mean I can't masturbate when I'm having a feeling? What do you mean I can't look at porn and do it? Like, I could not imagine. I didn't even have sex for the first year of my recovery. I didn't even work my job. I couldn't even go in and work. Like, that's how brutal it was. And I woke up 9 months later and this thing lifted, and it was like, oh my God, I'm going to be okay. But then there's the real work. You know, with drugs and alcohol, you never do it again. But sex and love addiction, you have to go out in the world and interact with people. So it's like bringing people back in a healthy way. And you slip in those moments. You know, you have moments where you are selfish and self-seeking. You have moments where you are manipulating and controlling. You have moments where your character defects come up, where you're jealous or envious or whatever it is. And it's like, oh, wait, here I go again. I'm back into my addiction. Okay, now I have to make amends, do all that process. And it's such a brutal place to get recovery. There's not much recovery in sex and love addiction. Not people stay around. So like, I'm an old timer with 12 years. We don't have many women that have recovery. I couldn't even find a sponsor. I had to go to a gay man because there's no women, right. There's no women talking about it, because people believe with this addiction, once you find a healthy relationship, that you're healed. And actually, when you get in a relationship is where the shit hits the fan even more. So that's one of the reasons I spoke out, but it was brutal. I never want to go through that withdrawal again. It was the worst pain in my life, but I get to walk other people through it and say, you will be okay. I mean, look at anybody that, is going through a breakup. They're in so much pain. So being a sex and love addict, all your worth is in this relationship and you lose it, or you lose that behavior, it is literally like a death of a person.
Right. And in the book, I know the book opens at like a cataclysmic moment where there's some Connecticut actor trying to stab some Southern young man who was like your old boyfriend. Was that the actual bottom? Was there some real fucking knife fight in Southern California over you?
Well, the location has changed. I change a lot. I change people's names, location, time. So I had to be really careful so no one wouldn't sue me. But that wasn't my bottom. See, that's how sad it is. Like, that moment should have been my bottom, and it wasn't.
It was thrilling, probably, in a way.
In a way, it was a high, to see two people fight over you, even though you're such a liar and a horrible person. But there's like this high of two people fighting over to be with you. And it's like, wait, you really want to be with me? I'm like, horrible. Okay. Oh, this makes me feel awesome. But it wasn't a bottom. And that's the sad thing. It takes a long time to hit a bottom in this program. Like I said, I had a man come in the other day, said I had 33 years in AA and I've been dodging this room like a plague and I can't do this any longer.
Well, because it's like, I think in Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous, like the thrill of interaction with the opposite sex or the same sex is such a relief. It's like, I feel good. I have endorphins. This person likes me. Yeah. I don't need to take a drug. I can have this person text me or like me or fuck me or whatever. Like it's
that 13 stepping. You AAs love to do 13 stepping.
Everybody loves a good 13th step. Come on.
You're not allowed to 13 step. There are so many rules in law. Like, dress a certain way, you can't talk a certain way, you can't go into descriptions and details, you can't 13 step. It is so like a box that it's literally the safest place in the world. I would rather hang out with a bunch of sex and love addicts in recovery than any other people. Like, I feel more safe in that room than walking around on the planet.
But I'm sure like there's a population of people in the room that are not in recovery like you described. I mean, I always thought it was really funny because I went to an early morning AA meeting in Manhattan and I would share about this obsession I would have. And one day there's a guy in the meeting, this really wonderful gay guy. He was like really into hot yoga and he gave me a free ticket to hot yoga. So I had this hot yoga ticket in my wallet. And then I probably shared about my family and my ex and blah, blah, blah. And at the end of the meeting, somebody else came up to me and they were like, you got to go to SLAA. And I was like, all right. So I went to hot yoga and I almost died in the hot yoga. And I'm all sweaty and like all yogaed out. And I go to the SLAA meeting and it was like really crazy because there was some like weird sexual energy between hot yoga and SLAA, and I shouldn't have done that. Like, that didn't make any sense. It was retarded. But I want to hear about your bottom. If the knife fight wasn't the bottom, where is the bottom, and how do you recognize it? Like, specifically, as specifically as you're willing to get. I don't want to put pressure on you.
Well, that I did say my bottom. My bottom was that dark night of the soul. My bottom was a person in my life passed away and died. And I found myself 2 days later, after I'm living with my boyfriend of a year and something that I cared about, and I started intriguing again. I started flirting, and all those old behaviors that happened in high school, that happened, when I first moved to LA, flooded back. And I was like, wait, I thought that was just because I was young and trying to find my person. I don't even like this person I'm intriguing and flirting with at all. Like, he's rude to waiters. He's not a nice person. And here I have someone at home who I actually care about as much as I can love and care about a person. And it was that moment. It wasn't some blow up, something crazy happened. It was that moment. I got a glimmer of the insanity that I was about to put myself in again. And every ounce of me was like, I cannot do this again. I've gotten caught so many times. I've hurt people so many times. They've hurt me so many times. I keep picking unavailable people because I'm fucking unavailable. And it's like, I could not go down that road. And it was that, that poem, like two roads, and I just could not do it. I was like, I don't have it in me to do what I used to do anymore. And I really knew, like, it can't be all these people and these guys that I'm seeing that aren't perfect for me or right for me or giving me butterflies anymore. Like, the problem is me. I'm the common denominator in this. So I really had that light bulb moment where I was like, I got to do something. And that's when I reached out to this therapist, and she really helped me.
So, and she said that you had the mask of a high-priced prostitute, which is hard to hear, I'm sure, especially because the lines between woman, attractive young woman, fucking actress, sex addict, like that, and then
casting couch, all that stuff.
Not to mention people pleasing, validation seeking. Like, it's so subtle. Like, it's not subtle between being like a nymphomaniac or cheating or fucking two people, but the progression from having like a male friend or wanting to do well in an audition or wanting to have chemistry in an audition. There's so many like slips to get to to that place. So like when they set up all these bottom lines, like no texting, no male friends, no flirting, no whatever, like it seems to me like that would be hard to accomplish all the time. Like, how did you, I mean, I think that's pretty amazing, and it's almost hard for me to believe, like, and I'm not calling you a liar, but it's almost hard for me to believe that, like, how do you not like look at a waiter at some point, or like if I guess you didn't go on auditions, so you didn't have a scene, right? Because probably, especially when you're playing with an actor, like the lines can get blurry, right? How difficult was that early part? You said you locked yourself away for 9 months. Who were you seeing? What was your life like? You were crying every day. Where did you find joy? What was that like?
Yeah. So that 9 months, like I said, I did lock myself away. Those bottom lines that I just named pretty much were there for the first 8 years of my recovery. So just recently I have guy friends, but most of them are in the program. So I don't have guy friends I hang out with. I don't have guy friends I text, nothing like that inappropriate, because it took that long to get rid of that energy that I was sucking and like desperately needing in this world. So like you said, the bottom lines, all that stuff was so difficult to do. And I honestly didn't look at a waiter in the eyes. And I remember this one moment, I got my 6 months chip, and I was sharing for my first lead in the newcomers meeting on Wednesday night. And I talk about this in the book, but I pulled up to an In-N-Out burger afterwards. And I pulled up in this, after I was paying this 16-year-old kid working the drive-through, I caught his eye and he went like this. He like found me attractive. I kid you not. It was like heroin shot up my entire body again. And my entire body was on fire because I had power and control. And this 16-year-old pimply kid found me attractive. And it was this moment like, I'm going to have this addiction forever. This is not going away. It is a progressive brain disease. I cannot escape this. I am addicted to that feeling. And flirting and intriguing is the same thing. And sex is the same thing as the cocaine high. They scientifically proved it. So that first 9 months, had to lock myself away. I did go on auditions, but I bombed them because I couldn't connect to the reader, because I couldn't connect to myself. I was for so long disconnected from myself, and putting, like my therapist said, a mask on top of a mask on top of a mask, that I couldn't do it. I would walk in and then I would have a breakdown in the car because I was like, I don't even know how to do my job anymore. This is ruining my life. So I barely went on any auditions. Like I said, I was living with my boyfriend. We didn't have sex for a year. So what that looked like is if I was crying or upset, he couldn't come in and console me. It was like we had a bond. Like, you can't come in and fix me when I'm having feelings. You are not allowed to fix me anymore.
How
so
long?
We had that whole thing.
I have a lot of questions. How long?
I know. Wait, I'm not done yet, though.
Oh.
I do want to say I went to therapy twice a week. I went to meetings all the time. I was working my 12 steps. The one thing that really saved my ass, and I know people are going to be like, yeah, whatever, is service. For the first 6 months, I would go and pack old people's groceries in the basement in Santa Monica. These older people on welfare and stuff. I would go pack their groceries. No one knew I was doing that for 2 hours, 3 times a week.
And no old guy looked at you in the eye? Like, you didn't catch the glare of some
I didn't see anybody. I was in the basement just packing their groceries. I didn't even see a single person while I was doing that. And another thing that saved my ass, I would go to McDonald's, and I talk about this, and I never shared it until the book, but I would go to McDonald's and buy $10 worth of hamburgers because I wasn't working. So I wasn't making any money, but I would go buy that and water and go give it out to homeless people. I was literally doing everything I could to be of service, but also do that deep work with therapy and step work. It was brutal. It was just brutal.
You said a lot of things there. I mean, I want to just jump onto the pimply kid first, because that's in my head. Yeah. But I'm going to give the pimply kid a pass for a second, because the most important thing that you're talking about is service. And I've been, sober for almost, 6.5 years, 6 years and change, whatever. And we're reading. You guys don't read Bill's story in SLAA?
Yeah, we do.
Okay,
mm-hmm.
So we just were. I've read Bill's story 100 times, but for some reason, we read Bill's story last week, and when you say people are yeah, whatever service, I was very much yeah, whatever service, because people talk about service in a way that they make themselves sound really good. Do you know what I mean? They make them sound ridiculously altruistic and they're good people, and I'm fuck them, they're not really that good, and that kind of thing. But when Bill talks about doing service in his story, he did it just like you did it. He did it so he could feel better. He didn't do it to be like the Dalai Lama. He did it because he knew that when he went and talked to a drunk, he didn't fucking get trapped in his head the same way you gave out burgers. Now, you're in the In-N-Out burger drive-thru, and there's a pimply kid, which is, and so what is the spider sense that goes off? How does he look at you? Is he what does he do? Explain that to me, because it's a very subtle thing. Well,
I took his breath away, so it was like that. Ooh,
wow,
he had that, and I can feel it when I talk about it. You know how sometimes drug addicts, or if they talk about their first high, they're like, oh, I can feel it in my body. It was that rush.
Brianne, can I say something
on
though?
This 16-year-old.
I don't think I've ever taken anyone's breath away. I think I've lived a whole life and never taken anyone's breath away. So let's talk what does it mean to be an attractive woman with power in the universe? You're walking down the street and people can't breathe. What is that experience and how does it lend itself to this affliction?
Well, it's like catnip, right? it added to my addiction. But you don't have to be like what society thinks as attractive to be a sex and love addict, but definitely
it doesn't hurt.
Helped me. Yeah, it helped me in this addiction. It actually probably made it 10 times worse. But here's the thing. I walk down the street now and nobody looks at me. Nobody flirts with me. Nobody whistles at me, because here's the thing. I don't put out that energy anymore. I don't put out that energy where I'm like searching for someone to say something or to have that exchange with. But you know, for the longest time, that was my validation. That was like my self-esteem. So I would walk down the street, and if nobody said anything, I'd be like, oh, I guess I don't look good today. Oh, this outfit I can't wear again. It was exhausting to be my worth internally on outside people's opinion of me.
Right. And you really retrained yourself to find things that made you feel good. Now, how about the poor boyfriend who had to be with you for the first year, never have sex? Like, what happened to that guy? How long were you with him?
We were together.
And you cheated on him all over the place.
5 years.
You cheated on him.
No, I didn't.
Okay. So tell us the story of that boyfriend.
Yeah, well, here's the kicker. I'm married to that boyfriend. We've been together 17 years.
All right, well, here. So he did the right thing. He made it through his year, and thank God. If you had broken up with that boyfriend, like, 367 days later, you were like, sorry, bud, it's over. All right.
That's the important thing I want to say is, like, I didn't go through this program to find a perfect partner. I didn't go through this program to like fix myself and then I'm ready for a partnership. I went through this program with somebody standing next to me, not trying to like fix me or complete me, that I had to do it myself. And luckily I picked a man that was sober in AA for 20 something years. He's 33 years now. It's like, I picked someone that understood that my addiction had nothing to do with him. You could literally be with the most perfect person, and this addiction will turn it inside out, will ugly any relationship. And that's what it does. And so I had to dig deep and do the work for myself. And we both were willing to let go of each other, but luckily we grew together,
right?
Separately, but like together. And now it's like, he can me today. I love my husband very much. He's a great person. I'm very lucky to be married to him, but he can leave me and I would be okay.
No,
I couldn't say that 12 years ago. Somebody leaves me, my life would be over. Even though if I didn't even like them, like I was playing a role, or we assign magical quality to people. We idolize and pursue them and then blame them for not fulfilling my fantasy and expectation, which I did all the time. And it's like, he's not a fantasy. He's a real person. He's a flawed human being. And I actually know how to deal with flawed human beings. And people call this program the second surrender. So it's like, I knew how to surrender and see like nothing outside of me is ever going to fix the inside, no matter what money, what career, what person, what attention, what billboard on Sunset. None of that is ever going to complete me. And it's an inside job. So the moment I surrendered and did that, and then allowed him to do work on himself, why he picked a woman that's a sex and love addict, what in him picked an unavailable person, he got to do that work with his therapist and his program, that we both got to see each other as flawed human beings and that we were okay if we're not together, but he makes me a better person. So that's what I tell people if they're listening. If you're in a relationship and they don't make you a better person, that's like the number one thing. If there's a lot of drama in your life in relationships, whether it be family members, friends, or partners, that's a huge issue too. And if you keep going back to an unavailable person, so those are the like 3 things I tell people, but I didn't like fix myself and get the perfect partner. And I'm really proud of that, because a lot of people come into the program cheating, almost cheating, doing these things that are not appropriate, intriguing, flirting outside of a relationship. And we stuck it out, and I'm really proud of myself and proud of us.
Right. And there is no external solution for a spiritual problem. So like, have you been on a billboard on Sunset?
I have, yeah, for 6. We were on very short time though. It didn't do anything. It literally, that's the horrible thing now. I don't get high from anything. And sometimes I said the other day in a meeting, like I go to more meetings now at 12 and a half years of recovery than I did when I started. I go to like 12 meetings a week because it's a spiritual massage for myself. It's one addict talking to another. It's being able to say everything like I've had a bad day, blah, blah, blah. I have a child now. Children trigger the shit out of you, especially with this relationship issue. You know, if my child triggers me, part of me wants to shut down, and I don't get the luxury to do that. If a day's hard, I don't get the luxury to numb out on Instagram or Netflix or putting my kid on the iPad in front of them because I don't want to deal with them. I actually have to sit with my kid and say, hey, what's going on, man? Like, what's going on with you? You're like in a bad mood. Like, let's talk it out. Are you angry? Are you frustrated? It's exhausting being awake all the time. Part of me misses numbing out at moments, but that's like not real living. And I've numbed out so much in my life that I don't want to do it anymore. So nothing gets me high. No new clothes, no new car, no money in the bank.
Nothing?
You know, nothing. I kid you not. Even sugar. I used to still get high off like donuts. Like, oh, I'm going to eat bad today and I'm going to eat sugar. I'm going to eat this. Nothing gets me high anymore. And there's a loss in that. Like there is like that addict self still is like, oh, what's life about? But it's like, I feel feelings now.
Right.
I feel sadness. I actually feel joy because when you numb out sadness, pain, all of that, you numb out joy. And I don't do that anymore. So it's such a beautiful life, but it's like a very awake life.
It's also just even keeledness. Like I hear people talk about that all the time. Like they miss their mania and their ups and downs and the ecstatic joy. Nobody misses the horrible depression, but the ecstatic joy. You never feel where do you feel ecstatic joy? I know you do. Where do you find your ecstatic joy?
Well, see, that's the thing. You have to redefine ecstatic joy. I, for so long, still connected my addictic high, the first moments of falling in love, that like overwhelming feeling as joy. But it's like, that's not joy. That's getting fucking high. So I have to relook at like, what's actual authentic joy? And it's this slow, like warm glow feeling instead, if that makes any sense. So it took me a long time to know the difference between that and joy, because for so long it was very complex.
Let me ask you this, because I know time is of the essence. I mean, you're like in Instagram though. You're involved. That's how I know you. That's how I've seen you and followed you. Like, and I know that I can get high on the validation of somebody liking something or low on nobody caring. How does Instagram fuck up your recovery, or does it not fuck up your recovery at all?
No, it fucks up my recovery. You know, I write about it in chapter 7 about compare and despair and going on Instagram and that those likes and that attention. So I had to make a lot of rules around it. I had to like stop myself from scrolling, from looking, from even looking at comments sometimes. So I try to use it really as like a business and not for me to go on and numb out while on the toilet or doing something else before an audition. So yeah, it's still hard for me. That one, my main character defect is compare and despair, and Instagram definitely hits it. But the validation part, it doesn't really get me anymore, because validation now are like attention or saying, oh, I love you, blah, blah, blah. Oh, what a pretty picture or whatever. It doesn't mean anything to me. So it's not that, it's me wanting to be better than or less than other people. So that's what I'm still working on.
I like that. And when you're going to In-N-Out Burger and some new pimply kid sees you and is like, do you notice? You don't notice? Like, like, come on, not even a little bit. You know,
no,
like,
I really don't.
Nothing?
I don't get anything from it. Honestly, if somebody tries I kid you not, but nobody flirts with me. Nobody does that. Like, you
shut it down.
It just doesn't happen.
You don't put it out there, but I'm sure people try.
No.
I'm sure people try. I don't believe you. People are scumbags. Guys are dogs. Some women probably are too. Like, people don't try.
Not that I notice. I just don't notice it anymore, like, nor do I care. Right. I don't want anybody's energy to affect me like that ever again.
Do you have some hardcore meditation practice, some hardcore spiritual shit going on that you're conditioned to do this?
Yeah, I pray every morning. I hit my knees every morning and every night, whether I believe in a God or not that morning. I do a gratitude list every night.
Every
things I'm
night?
grateful for.
How many
Every
things?
night.
How many things do you put on the list?
3. It has to be 3 things. Completely
That seems like-
different. They can't.
That seems doable. 10.
Yeah,
10 is too much.
I have a doable program.
Right. Well, I appreciate everything you've shared with us. I look
Thank you.
I was going to say I look forward to some pimply faced kid getting their breath taken away, but that's not good for you. So I don't look forward to that. But I appreciate the description either way. Buy The Secret Life of a Hollywood Sex and Love Addict novel. Go on the podcast and thank you. Oh, I have another question. It's not that remarkable of a question. I want to go on your podcast. What kind of secret do I need to have?
Oh, well, write me later. You can have any secret. It can be a dark secret that was in the past that you've gotten through. It can be a light secret that's funny, so we'd have all types of secrets.
All right, cool.
So whatever, let me know. I can't wait to have you on Secret Life. It will be fun.
All right, cool. Thanks, Brianne. I appreciate you. Have a
Thank
great
you.
day. All right, later.
No, baby, I'm face down on the floor.